Hi, it's Melvin Way again. We're back on day 439. I'm going to do some perimeter fertilization. Most of the footage in the first half here will just be watering footage, fertilization footage. This time I'm using some more Miracle-Gro singles, distilled water, mixing in my watering can. I know it's not going to be completely dissolved efficiently in some cases. Maybe for crystals it'll work better compared to the vitamins. The water just turns light blue, and then we're good to go. I'm going to shuffle closer to my Joshua tree seedling and start watering on the perimeter. So as you can see, there's been a little bit of growth. It looks healthy. I'm doing perimeter watering because I don't want too much fertilizer to get right on top of the roots. I want to water on the perimeter so the roots can have some kind of impetus or incentive to grow outwards. Otherwise, if I just water on the center each time, that's going to be where the soil is wettest and the roots have no incentive to grow out. So it's the next day, day 440. I'm doing some vitamin supplementation with my multivitamin pills intended for adult men. So nearly just threw it in the can there. That would have done nothing if I had just poured water in it. Probably nothing for even days. So I'm going to crush it with a pair of pliers like I did in times past. It's kind of messy like this. Just do it outdoors so you don't make a big mess, or don't care if you do. And I'm still going to add some Miracle-Gro singles in the bottom. Make sure all my plants have enough fertilization. So as you can see in the background, I have my avocado seedling. This is older footage because I haven't done an update on this Joshua tree seedling for so long. The growth progress is pretty meager compared to, say, an avocado seedling, so there's no point in submitting a new episode every month. So I'm going to do some bottom watering, get the soil wet as far away from the plant's roots as possible to give it that incentive. It's day 443. Just going to do some perimeter watering. Pot was really light prior to all these waterings, but in retrospect that's a lot of watering for just the span of a few days within a week. But ever since the transplant, this thing has done nothing for a few months, and then it started taking off again. Well, I suppose taking off is a very strong phrase because this thing is still just kind of sitting there growing very, very slowly, but at least it's not losing leaves anymore. So on day 450, give it more distilled water. Previously I was watering it like every 2 or even 3 weeks, or even close to a month, and I don't think that was frequent enough. One of my viewers said that he has a Joshua tree or a few seedlings in Texas, so here I'm watering every 10 days for this time period. So anyway, I think in the region where he lives in Texas, it gets maybe 40 something inches of rain a year. So that's a lot. He has outdoor pots, and that ensures that his Joshua tree seedlings get rain frequently throughout the year. That's very different from the 14 or so inches that Joshua Tree National Park might get. Was it 10? I don't remember the exact figure, but 12 days later or whatever, I'm doing aspirin watering because my avocado seedling ran into some trouble. So based on previous episodes, I explained that aspirin can induce systemic acquired resistance. It can help your plants against disease, bugs, or other kinds of infestations, or just general stress. So this is a lot easier to dissolve, these low-dose aspirin dissolvable tablets, and I have about a liter in each of these 1.5 liter REI canteens. So I'm going to do some watering on the perimeter again, on the same principle that you don't want to have all the water just go directly on top in the center, although I kind of did a little bit of that here. The other reason I kind of avoid the center is because the potting mix and sand, what little bit I still have left in there, keeps shifting around and gets between the bases of the leaves. So it's day 485. There are white burn spots noticed that weren't there before. So I'm going to have to conclude that the aspirin watering doesn't really do anything because it didn't really help in the case of my avocado seedling when it got into trouble. And in this case, you can see some leaf damage has occurred, somewhat akin to, say, warts or calluses forming on human skin. And typically after I do aspirin watering or fertilization, I'm afraid of the splash, so I do some of this distilled water spraying. And the other thing is my father tried aspirin watering with some of his plants and didn't really notice any beneficial effects. I know in the beginning I said, it doesn't seem like it hurts, but it could help. And in this case, I'm lifting the pot to gauge the weight of the potting mix, and I'm going to do some further washing like that. Although, like I said, you might get some sand grains stuck between the blades at the bottom. So anyway, yeah, I think that whole aspirin experiment is a big failure. There's really no benefit to be seen. My father said, some of his plants even got hurt by higher concentrations of aspirin. So different plant species have different tolerances. So now I'm showing footage from Joshua Tree National Park. I went in September of 2016 on a weekend. I got an annual pass. I'll be visiting a lot more national parks. So if you visit more than 4 times a year, it's worth your money. And I heard in some cases it costs like $30 to get into some of the Utah national parks. Haven't verified that myself, but that would definitely make 3 or 4 trips worth it. And you can go in and out, as many times as you want, whereas a day pass is just $20. So as you can see, the Joshua trees look quite different from what I've been showing you this entire time on my balcony. You have these adventitious shoots, it seems, coming out. And quite frankly, there's very little foliage on these trees. You have these just barely serrated on the edges, big fat blades coming out that spike, and they're pretty thick in the wild. And it seems like they just die back after a while. That's the fate of all these blades, basically, or needles, if you want to call them. They just fold in the opposite direction, according to gravity, and form a protective coat for the tree trunks. So it seems like in this case, Joshua trees can recover even when they fall over for whatever weird reason. I don't think these tree trunks are as solid as they are with, hardwoods or even softwood trees that grow really fast. So you can see the needles folding down there. Here's a case where you're looking over the cliffs and you can only see one Joshua tree there all alone. One trick a friend showed me is to freeze your sports drinks or water bottles before you leave the house, and then let it thaw slowly as you're out during the day. So in this case, I froze a bottle of body armor. This is great because it has lots of potassium and other salts that you need if you sweat a lot. On this day, I didn't really sweat that much. I was wearing short sleeve viscose shirt, and it wasn't that hot. It was maybe about 80 Fahrenheit, which is, I think, 26 Celsius. So it's not too bad. And you can see after 4.5 to 5 hours, it's still all frozen in the core, which is excellent. In fact, it's kind of slow. So this is what a dead Joshua tree looks like. Oh, and I might add that if you freeze a drink like that, the core is essentially distilled water ice. So it sort of self-distills in a kind of reverse process as normal water distillation. And the first sips of a melted energy drink or whatever sports drink that you drink in will be super sweet because it's ultra concentrated. So you can see the leaf tips here. The blades are blackened, whitened at the very extremities. It seems like that's very normal for a Joshua tree. This is what it looks like staring at a big pine branch end or something like that. And who knows how old this thing is, because from what I've read, most Joshua tree seedlings grow, I think, 3 or 4 inches per year in the beginning. That's 7.5 to 10 centimeters. That's nothing. So this thing, some of these, I guess you would call them saplings that we're looking at, could be as old as me. So this one has already gotten off to a weird start. It's kind of crawling on the bottom like a snake. And this one has so many adventitious shoots, or at least that's what it looks like. They could all be, sister seeds or whatever that just grew in the same place, but I kind of doubt it because the main trunk suggests there's an extensive root system coming out of it, and that would mean that it would suck up all the water nearby and not allow any competition. That's why Joshua trees are always spaced fairly far apart. They don't grow dense like a New England forest or boreal forest, etc. So this Joshua tree is very interesting. It fell over. It's quite old, possibly much older than anyone watching this video. And out of the top of this trunk, it's been in this position for probably a very long time. All these shoots came out, and I bet that's as long as they're going to get. They're not going to form trunks. If they did, the weight would just break everything off. But as you can see, there's just not that much foliage for your average Joshua tree. There's just lots and lots of sun exposure and probably just not enough water to sustain any more foliage or growth than that. So this is my favorite Joshua tree. I call it the telephone pole Joshua tree. It's along one of the main paved roads. There are dirt roads you can go on if you have an off-road vehicle or if you want to go on foot. So when I initially made a video about this special tree, I was thinking it's 45 feet tall, but I think 35 to 40 is more accurate. It's not as tall as I once thought. But these ones that are next to it are pretty healthy and big. I'm not sure if there's a correlation between the road helping to collect water underneath it because it prevents evaporation after a rain, but then I thought maybe they just built the roads there next to the biggest Joshua trees just to attract more visitors. So it's day 513. We're back to my balcony. We have lots of healthy growth, but this is a far cry from what we just saw. Even the smallest Joshua tree seedlings, where it's just like a head, a tuft of spikes sticking out of the ground, look way more developed than this. The blades are much broader, much more robust. So I think despite all the early root rot, in which I lost 3 out of 4 seedlings, and the transplant afterwards, we're back on track, and we're definitely growing and growing. This looks a lot more developed than even compared to the beginning of this episode, which was in the 400 something days. So yeah, it's been probably less than 80 days, and there's been a significant amount of growth, and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and watering on the perimeter and from the bottom, and we'll see how far this takes us. So stay tuned for the next episode.